if you haven't watched Survivor at all or have only seen a couple of seasons, I will give you a spoiler-free review of Survivor 41, say if I think it's worth watching for a beginner or not. And then in the second half of this video, I want to discuss specifics about the season, about the winner. Survivor 41 just ended, and there's a lot of discussion about the winner and their edit, all of the new twists this season. So I wanted to just discuss what I thought of this new era of Survivor. Hello and welcome back to the Miscellaneous channel where we do miscellaneous things. I'm Zeleny. I typically cover pop culture, internet trends, and other miscellaneous things on this channel, so subscribe if that's your vibe. And if you're new here, welcome. I've gotten a few new subscribers recently, and I just wanted to say thank you for subscribing. As y'all may or may not know, I am a big fan of Survivor. I do consider myself a relatively new fan and a little bit of a casual fan when it comes to the Survivor fandom. Survivor 41 had its finale, and I'm pretty excited about this season. If you're a total beginner to Survivor and for some reason are watching this video, I created a bit of a beginner's guide for getting into Survivor and what are good seasons to start with depending on what you want to see. I only started watching Survivor about 2 years ago. I can't even tell with the pandemic how many years ago, but I only started watching Survivor in recent years and I became a really big fan. I've seen a lot of the seasons, but not every single one. So I feel like I'm a little bit of a representative of like newer viewers or people that just got into Survivor maybe around the pandemic, but I do feel like I've seen enough Survivor to sort of give a good review of this season overall. Is Survivor 41 worth watching? But in general, I would say Survivor 41 is pretty worth watching. It was a really great season. It had a lot of twists, which made for an exciting season for the most part. I thought it was advantage and twist heavy. I think they were trying a lot of new things and therefore some things still have a lot of kinks to work out and didn't quite go as planned. But I think what's great about Survivor 41 is the cast. The casting was just so good, and it was crazy how many people on this season were strategically minded from the very beginning. It's become a more common thing in modern Survivor that a lot of the players have really robust and complex strategies even coming into the game compared to old Survivor when people were just kind of vibing there on the beach a lot of the time and not thinking strategy at all. But anyway, Survivor 41 particularly had a cast that was so smart and so complex and also had a lot of different personalities. Even some of the early boots of the season had a lot of personality, and I thought we were gonna go further, honestly, because they were so kooky and had a lot of screen time. The cast really saved the season and made it worth watching. I actually do recommend this season for newer fans. A big reason I say that it is kind of a good beginner season. It is a little weird because it has so many twists, so you might not know what a lot of things mean. It's hard for me to put myself back in that mindset of like not knowing what a hidden immunity idol is or things like that. But if maybe you've seen a couple seasons, this one is a fine one to pick back up. The big theme of Survivor 41 was that Survivor was entering a new era. The working title for season 41 was The Dawn of a New Era. That was going to be the subtitle. So I do recommend it for fans of Survivor, but I also recommend it for newer fans or casual fans. There's just a lot of character depth to it, and I think that was the saving grace for a season that could have very easily been ruined by the amount of twists that it put in. And it was because all the players were so strategic this season that like it was kind of tough to have an alliance this season because people were so easy to recognize threats and trying to take them out and planning and plotting. Like it was just a good season for that dynamic of the game. But I can see people being pretty annoyed with the twists, so like maybe if you really hate twists and advantages, there were some moments of the season that were like, I do not like this twist. I think it's kind of messing too much with the game. But all in all, I think it's worth it. I think this cast is worth it, whatever your exposure to Survivor is. They really kept repeating over and over that they want this season to be Survivor. Drop the 4, keep the 1. Like, a 41. I think they're just trying to modernize Survivor, make it less stale, I guess. But I think because they treated it as such a like fresh start, if you're a beginner to Survivor, you can jump in, and they're trying to treat it like it's back to its roots or beginning. I think Survivor is a good show where, as long as it's not an all-star season or a season with returning players, you can pretty much jump in and not get other seasons spoiled. Let's talk a little bit just overall about Survivor 41 and all of the new things that this season tried to implement specifically. So the biggest change, and this is coming back from COVID, so this is the main one. So it was a shorter season. The season lasted 26 days instead of the usual 39. And this was fully due just to quarantine rules in Fiji. Because of the shorter season and how it was a lot less time, it's less than a month, they decided to give them minimal food and supplies. They got no rice, basically, which usually on Survivor they start off with rice, with like a tarp, other just general survival things. They gave them absolutely nothing. Like, a lot of the season was spent sleeping on the sand, literally on the dirt. It does make sense for the shorter time frame because from 39 days to 26 is a significant jump, so I understand how you have to make it harder. Also, because they were trying to make everything harder, they introduced punishment. When tribes would lose an immunity challenge, they would get a penalty and get their flint taken away. So even after you've earned your flint as a tribe, you could get it taken away if you lost a challenge, which before you just earn it the first time and you're good. Also, some other production type changes were that in 2020, CBS made an agreement to cast 50% people of color on their reality TV shows, as well as the same commitment for behind the scenes. So it's cool that CBS implemented this blanket policy across their cast and crew. This cast of Survivor was 50% people of color. I feel like Cook Islands season 13 is the only season to sort of match this. Another kind of additional or like format change to Survivor this season was this kind of like game within a game, which made me laugh so hard at first when I heard it because RuPaul's Drag Race just tried to do this game within a game. RuPaul said it so many times in the show that it became a meme to say game within a game. So when Survivor came back and was like, we have a game within a game. But it wasn't a game that affected the action of the show. It was like a game for viewers to play and get secret sneak peeks and stuff. So they would show a puzzle somewhere in the episode. I didn't play the game within a game, and it was aimed at younger audiences to get them engaged, I guess. The puzzle was on so quick on the TV that I could never figure it out. Like, in real time, I would have to pause it. Sort of along with this, like, trying to engage the viewers more directly, Jeff had some moments of, like, talking to the camera and talking to us before they enter the challenge. And that was kind of weird. Like, I don't think I'm a fan of it. A lot of pieces of media after 2016 like to show like behind the scenes. They want to give the audience a peek behind that curtain. Any documentary you watch that's like released 2017 or later, the person they're interviewing for the documentary, they'll show them like getting ready or fixing their mic or fixing their makeup, or they'll show like the wider shot of like the mic and the cameras around the person. That's become such a like staple now of content. I don't know if it was like the rise of like internet culture and reality TV and wanting to see like behind this. I don't know kind of where that came from. Maybe I'll do a video on that at some point. But it feels like Survivor was trying to play into this a little bit of like, and trying to follow this new trend of showing the gritty behind the scenes production of Survivor. But I wasn't a big fan of it. I just don't think Survivor needs it. I think it's an entertaining enough show without having to have that. And something that when I first got into Survivor that really amazed me about the show is how seamless the production was, in that like you forget there's cameras there, and they're just like in the wilderness. Especially when I would watch challenges, I would be like, how are they getting these angles sometimes, like without getting other cameras in the shot? I'm a fan of like this seamless production on Survivor, particularly. You never see camera guys, you never see mics. Like, it's just kind of like cool how they manage in such a like rugged environment to disguise a whole large scale production. Also, a finale kind of change they made. They announced the winner on location. Usually Survivor has a live finale taping type thing. They framed it as them paying homage to season 1, where that was the only season that had the winner announced it on the island at the final tribal. I imagine the decision to do this was based on like they have this production bubble they're filming in with a lot of strict quarantine rules, and it's easier to just choose the winner there and not risk COVID ruining a live finale with an audience, and all the players have to come back and sit next to each other during COVID. It makes sense why they would just not take the risk. Also, the jury at the end, they didn't go one by one and ask a question to the final 3. The jury had an open forum, so it was a conversation back and forth between the 3 finalists and the jury. I think this cast was strong enough to pull that off. So now this is your spoiler alert, and we are discussing Survivor 41 and the actual things that happened in it. So I want to give my thoughts on the winner. So this is really a spoiler alert. So the winner was Erica. I was happy with the winner. There was basically 2 sides of the fandom. One side of the fandom was really blindsided that Xander didn't win. They thought he had it in the bag at that final 3. And then the other side of the fandom thinks it was obvious that it was Erica and that it would never be Xander. I definitely fell into the camp that agreed with Erica winning and predicted it as the final 3 that I thought the jury would go for. I did think Xander would get more votes. Like, I thought it might have been more close. Just because he kind of has that, like, young guy charm, and I knew he was kind of a fan favorite. Erica won full stop. Like, she got all the votes. So, I'm happy for that. Throughout the season, I was pulling for Ricard, as I'm sure a lot of people were. I was like, I wanted him to win so bad. But I knew if he ever lost an immunity challenge after the sham vote, he would be gone. He was, and that was so sad. And that's the sad thing about Survivor. A lot of the time, especially when it's a good season, the most like good players get cut, and they end up not being the best players because they couldn't fly under the radar enough. It was sad. I did want him to win, but Erica was my second choice. Once Ricard left, I was pulling for her, and I'm glad she won. I do think she played a low-key game, and that's what a lot of people are complaining about on Reddit, that her edit was not obvious. But I also saw a really funny meme on the Reddit that was like, basically the fandom of Survivor hates it when the winner edit is obvious and when it's not obvious. It's just typical fandom bullshit of just like, everyone gets mad at everything. I don't think Erica's edit was bad. I just think because she was on the winning tribe at the beginning, we just didn't get to see much screen time of anyone on that tribe. And then afterwards, she stayed pretty low-key. Some people were really pinpointing her as this mastermind from the beginning. And honestly, at that point, I was like, y'all are crazy. She's not a mastermind. Like, she's at the bottom. It did take a bit for Erica to grow on me, but it was at the Shan vote that I was pulling for Erica as my second place after Ricard, because I did see her orchestrate that a bit and pull that off. That made me switch on Erica. But I really love that Erica played like underestimate me kind of game. I think it was a really smart thing, and it just goes to show like that it worked, how biased we can be as humans, just the royal we. So many people underestimated her. Even Xander, in the final moment, that was his $1 million mistake. He underestimated her so much and was his downfall in the end. I really like that Erica played a low-key game. I think it's what you have to do in Survivor, because if not, what happened to Shan is what happens to you, or what happened to Ricard is what happens to you. It's rare when you can have like a Tony or a huge frontrunner make it to Final Tribal. On the subreddit, I've heard that if you watch like a lot of the bonus content or like read the bonus interviews post episode every week, you gain a lot more insight about why the jury picked Erica. And I have to admit, I'm not one of those people that is watching a lot of extra content. I watch some of the Ponderosas and here and there read stuff from Reddit, but not. I don't consume a lot of the Survivor economy content. Survivor, I just kind of take the show as it is. But even then, I still saw Erica's game and thought she was the clear winner. And I did read one interview. It was Erica's post-winning interview. She talked about how she wore her hair in pigtails to appear younger and appear innocent. And just things like that she was doing small things and telling people really small things, bonding with them in a very strategic way, but in a way that looked very unassuming. And that's why it may be hard to see the extent of her game. It's been a long time since a female winner. That's not the reason she should win at all, but it's just a cool thing that like breaking the curse of modern men winning Survivor. It's interesting too because at Final Tribal you see Erica wear her hair down and appear more mature and present herself more mature. I also want to talk a little bit about Deshawn, who was actual second place, receiving 1 vote from his closest alliance, Danny. I think if Erica hadn't been in the final 3 and it had been Deshawn, Xander, and Heather, Deshawn would have won, I think. Maybe Xander could have pulled it out, but I think Deshawn would have won. I know they hashed it out a lot at Tribal Council about how he was too emotional at Tribal and too temperamental in general for his alliances to trust him. We had that truth bomb that apparently had a lot more to it, according to post-show interviews. For me, he just played the game super clumsy. Like, he got there, he got to Final Tribal, but like in the messiest and clumsiest way. That I think was Deshawn's issue. It's hard to make a good case for anything being intentional. So Xander and Liana, I ship them kind of. I know I think Liana has a boyfriend now and they're not anything, but Liana and Xander had the weirdest relationship, the most middle school ass relationship. Basically, they hated each other and they kept like bickering at each other. If you have the time, go find this bonus clip. Actually, I'm gonna link it below because it was so good. Xander and Liana, they're fighting a lot and bickering, and Shannon and Ricard talk to each of them individually, and both of them kind of admit that they're like kind of flirtatious with each other and kind of like they like each other. And basically Shannon and Ricard are like the strict parents, or like the parents trying to get the tea on their kids. Like, I can't believe they cut it from the episode. This scene was actually from the episode that Shan got voted out, which I think was the best episode of the season and one of the best episodes of Survivor. It just had so much, like, it was like perfection of an episode. So that's another thing that made the season so great. There were quite a few like standout episodes, and this one was like the queen of the episodes this season. Like, oh, the Shan vote out was so good. There's a lot of hate out there for Shan in the fandom, and I've liked Shan. I just like her for reality TV. I think she made for a great TV. Had a really fun game because she was going really hard and causing a lot of drama. That scene was just so funny that Liana and Xander kind of liked each other, basically. It's just a dynamic that I feel like is universal. I don't know, like, I feel like anybody could watch them like bickering and understand what's going on. Like, a lot of, it's just like a human thing. Also, another thing that almost came to fruition in this season was the All Black Alliance, which I think would have been kind of a milestone. If the alliance had succeeded, it would have been kind of a milestone to have, you know, the top 4 on Survivor be black. I think this alliance was doomed just because Shan was such a big threat. No one wanted to risk her going really far in the game. I do feel like this alliance could have gone strong longer. Shan had an idol, and I think that was the main reason to target her and blindside her specifically. I think they could have maneuvered themselves to Danny, Deshawn, and Liana end up top 3. They turn on Shan later in the game. I think that could have worked for them. It was just something where they had too big a threat in their alliance, and I see why it disintegrated. I don't know how loved Evie is in the fandom or not or what, but I really loved Evie, and she was just so joyful and like such a nice energy. So let me talk about some critiques, and mostly I'm going to be breaking down the twists that I didn't like, and then later on I'll talk about a few of them I did like. I think the twists were the main thing. I talked about the cast, and I think a lot of the cast was great. There were a couple of twists for me that threatened the integrity of the game a little too much for my liking. The hourglass twist is the most controversial of the season for sure. Apparently there was an interview that talked about how Danny got really mad at Jeff. He argued with Jeff. He didn't like raise his voice or anything like that, but he was pretty upset by that twist. Danny comes from the sports world, and it probably for him threatened like the fairness of the game. And I agree. I think the hourglass twist was a very sloppy one. Post-merge, the tribe was split into 2 teams, and they had to compete in a challenge, and the winning team got to go to the merge feast. The losing team did not get the merge feast, and the winning team was also safe at tribal council, all of them. 2 people had to sit out of the game, and the winning team would pick one of the 2 sit-outs to join them in the reward, the feast. The unchosen sit-out person had to go to exile for 2 days, and it was at exile Erica, who ended up being this person, got offered the hourglass twist. If she broke this hourglass that Jeff gave her, she would be immune at the next tribal council, and she would swap who won at that challenge, basically stripping the winning team of their immunity at the next tribal and giving it to the losers. The choice wasn't hard enough, I think, for this twist, because of course Erica's gonna choose her own immunity. I think everyone on this season at least understands like your own immunity is worth whatever. They wouldn't take it as a big betrayal. Like, it's a no-brainer for her. It threatens the integrity of like they earned and won that immunity, and they were told they won it, and then it was stripped away. Usually on Survivor you have to earn everything. To me, that threatens the integrity of the game, and I think that's what Danny was trying to argue with Jeff about. Also, I don't like them losing out on the merge feast. Like, it just feels wrong to not give them a merge feast at all. Like, the merge feast is always like a milestone thing, and it just feels like an important moment for them all to start talking, start making alliances. So it just felt weird to divide them. So I didn't like the hourglass twist. I agree with Danny. In a similar vein, I didn't like the one episode where they did 2 tribal councils. Like, again, it was post-merge, and they divided them in 2 groups, and each group went to tribal council. For me, I don't like them splitting them up post-merge. Like, that's not the point, and like that just felt weird to me. Another twist I didn't love, I liked parts of it and I didn't like others. It was the do or die twist, which Deshawn ended up getting this. The group was told before the immunity challenge, if you participate in this challenge and you are the first one out, you will have to face a game of chance at tribal council, and you might get eliminated on the spot. I didn't love that they kept calling this like the do or die and you will die and like all of these things. That language, it felt very Squid Game to me. I was like, die? Like, die. Jeff didn't tell them what the game of chance would be, but at least he warned them before the immunity challenge, and they got to sit out. I liked the part about Jeff warning them and telling them before they participated. I think that was fair. When they're choosing to participate, they're choosing that risk. The twist itself, I did not like, because I don't like the voting getting messed with, similar to splitting them up in different random groups. Like, I don't like the voting of like the society threatened in this game. I didn't like that someone could just get eliminated by chance. It didn't make me too mad because I wasn't thinking Deshawn was gonna win anyway. And also he ended up passing this chance test in a very unstatistically probable way. I can just say improbable. He passed it in an improbable way. Those were the twists that sort of threatened the integrity of the game, and I think were the worst for me. I just don't like tribal council and post-merge unity threatened, I found out watching this season. So while they were divided in tribes, they had the summit and prisoners dilemma. Two people, one from different tribes, depending on who won immunity challenges or something. I don't even remember at this point, this era of the game. Two people from separate tribes would go to this mountain. They would go up at the top and they had to spin a wheel to risk their vote or gain an advantage. And it's kind of almost too complicated for me to explain. You can find it on the wiki, but through this, a lot of people ended up getting advantages. Something I did like about the summit thing was people from different tribes got to know each other and make connections for later post-merge. I like that idea, and I want them to keep a little bit of that. The bad thing about the summit was that how it worked was the same every episode. Anyone that goes there, you know what happened. You can pretty much know who has advantages by knowing who went to the mountain. And also there was a lot of sharing of information this season, so it just felt like this summit thing, there was not enough like secrecy or mystery about it, because they didn't switch up how it worked every time, or they just could have made it more, I think, low-key in some way. That was a big downfall of the season. Everyone knew where every idol was. Everyone knew where every advantage was. And same thing with the Beware advantage. This is how the immunity idols worked this season. One person from each tribe had to say a phrase at the challenge, and only until everyone said their phrase, the hidden immunity idol activate and be useful. Because it took forever for all three tribes to find their phrase, you had one and two people saying a random phrase every challenge, making it really obvious who had what. Once one tribe knows what the Beware advantage is, then once they merge, everyone knew where every single idol was, every advantage. They needed to figure out how to do things more subtly. Let me get into some positives and some of the things I felt work. I already talked about some of the positives I found with those twists that ultimately I found negative, but had some positive things about them. I do think this season provided some of the best episodes. Like I said, people had their moments to shine and give sort of like their final passionate speeches before they left, kind of thing. And it was just a really great season in that sense of like having some really intense and good Survivor episodes. I kind of like the shut in the dark thing at Tribal Council. I know I said I don't like the voting messed with, but I think this is kind of a good one when the situation is right for it. This was where someone that knows they're probably the target of the vote can roll a die, and there's a slim chance that they'll be safe at that tribal council. It's kind of like a last resort if you know you are getting voted out. It didn't become relevant this season because it was so confusing who was getting voted out. I could see this process being good for a season with like a really strong and boring majority alliance that's just like picking people off in a very like obvious order, because those seasons get really boring. It's just kind of a nice security blanket for production to not have a super boring episode. And I think the prize for rolling the die is good. You lose your vote, so like it felt like a well-designed process. But who knows, maybe it'll go haywire later and I'll take all of this back. So I didn't like the summit itself and how it worked the same every time, but I liked the advantages that came out of it. An extra vote, which isn't new, a vote steal. I don't remember them using that. Well, maybe I'm just not remembering. And knowledge is power. The knowledge is power was interesting. I think if it would have worked, it would have been really good. The way it played out was still really great and made for that was another amazing episode, because that tribal was so good, with Xander being like, no, you can have this fake one. Liana could ask somebody if they had an advantage or an idol. If they did, they had to fork it over. Liana asked Xander, but because everyone knew about this, Xander had protected himself by giving it to Tiffany, and It was just perfect. It was such a like gag moment. Liana also seems to have a really good attitude about it post-game. She viewed it in a very mature way, so I appreciated her attitude about it all. It is an embarrassing moment, but I think she embraces it. That's all I have about Survivor 41. Please let me know what you think in the comments below. I would love to hear about it. What do you think of this season? What did you like? What did you not like? Did you see the winner coming or not? Maybe try to tag spoiler alert if you do talk about the winner, just in case anyone's down there in the comments. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel if you enjoyed. I put out new videos twice a week about pop culture, internet trends, and other miscellaneous things. And you can follow me at Miscellaneous on Instagram or Twitter to find out about new videos, or just turn on the bell notification here on YouTube. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye!